32nd Sunday of Ordinary Time. There are two stories in today's Liturgy of the Word, two widows and two holy people, Elijah and Jesus. Main characters. Elijah is walking along and is hungry and thirsty, and he sees a widow and says, go get me a drink of water. Pretty bossy in a way for a holy man. And she says, okay. So she goes off, and he says, as long as you're up, I'll take some bread too, please. And she makes a good response. She says, well, to be honest, I just have a little flour and a little oil, and I have a son, and I was going to make bread and then eat it, and we're going to die because we don't have anything else. And of course, he makes the prophetic promise, do it anyway, do not be afraid. And she does it, and a great thing happened. At least for another year, there was plenty in the jar and plenty of oil to make good bread, fulfilling God's promise to be faithful to Israel. So it's a story. And then we have a similar story, in a way, of people, religious people, rich people who are going to the treasury, and Jesus is just observing. And the rich people put a lot of money in there. And it wasn't just, it was in Jerusalem, so a lot of pilgrims. It was kind of a tourist tax to contribute to the well-being of the temple and religious areas of Jerusalem. And he's watching, and then he sees, oh, of course, a widow. I don't know how he knows, but Mark does. She comes in and puts in 2 coins. And he says, the others, religious, they like to trumpet their arrival. They like to be greeted. They wear religious clothes. Hello, Rabbi, honors. And this woman puts in 2 cents. So it's a dramatic story, celebrating what appears to be little, Jesus making much of little. Let's put it that way. And the opposite is he makes little of much. I must tell you a story. This gospel that we're using today, I used for my mother's funeral. My mother, she had 7 children, she and my father. One little sister died after 8 months, being injured at birth. My mother gave up going to college so she could get a job to support my father, who was in law school. She never went back to school. The reason I wanted that for my mother's funeral was my mother, as many mothers did and do, sacrificed her life for us. 6 little children becoming adults, cooking, cleaning, big house. She gave her all for us. But she didn't trumpet it. It was what she was. She was an intelligent, educated woman, read a lot, but she gave all her life's energy to my father and to her family. And there is something in the gospel today that is about, did my mother do it because she didn't think she could do anything else outside the house? No, at that time it was, and this was in the 40s, 50s. It's what women were expected to do. To show up, but not show off. No one celebrated my mother outside the house. It was the usual thing to have a big family and to stay at home. She did it with all her heart, with all her livelihood. And Jesus, who makes much of little, asks us not to say, my little is too little, I can't offer it. My mother never said that. She was a wonderful mother and educator in the house. But that's a richness. In a way, it's a strange thing. But to say, my 2 cents is not enough for community, for involvement in the church, in my community, in the neighborhood, in the school. Who am I? I don't see what you do. In a way, you're saying, I can't show up because that with which I'm showing up is hardly showable. But the widow dropped 2 coins, and when everyone say, what's 2 coins, 2 cents? Jesus is saying, don't pridefully judge yourself negatively. Because what you're doing is, and we can do, not you, but we all do this, if it's not worth $10 or $100, I'm not worth that much. My gifts aren't that. See, in a way, that's pride. It's not humility. It's arrogance. Saying, what God has given me, I want more to be able to give more. What are you doing? You're really showing up to show off, which is what the Pharisees and the scribes and the religious leaders, they were showing off. I'm not saying we should be hidden. No, showing up might be to a big crowd or whatever. It should be seen. One little other story that always fascinated me. There was a Jesuit church. There is a Jesuit church in Milwaukee who had a basement part of the church. And the morning mass, there was a group of people, and when this was in Latin, it was when I was a boy, but we marveled at it. There was a race. We didn't have the greeting of peace then. So right after the Lamb of God, the Agnus Dei, there was a race. Who could be the first at the communion rail? There was a padded communion rail and a rail, and the priest would come down. Who would be first to receive the Eucharist? And we thought this was pretty humorous, because they would bump each other out of the way to be the first. Is the first the best? The most devoted? We can do that. So there is a pride, and then there is a pride that says, I'm too humble. I want my humility to be seen. No, don't do that. So Jesus is celebrating that whatever you have, share that. Don't judge it. And let it be for a revelation of your goodness that you know, not a display so that other people will know your goodness. They might, but that's not your intent. Revelation of God's goodness, gifts within us, that's revelation of God showing up through you. Now we like to be known, and we have to, in a sense, put that in our back pocket and let His goodness in us be showing off as a revelation of him who showed up and invited the gifts you've been given, let them be displayed as God showing up and showing off. You show up to display him. It's quite a new way of looking at things. I'm saying do great things. But why? To be first? So that other people will say, we can put that in the back pocket. It's a human thing, yes, but we're living a spiritual life as human beings. What we receive in the Eucharist, Jesus showing up, is for us to share him with others. One hand to receive, one hand to distribute.